Welcome to the ZNL Podcast, a podcast brought to you by ZN, the OG digital agency in Brussels.
Hi, and welcome to Sevinç Kader. Very, very excited to have you on the show today. Sevinç is a very experienced communicator, a policy expert, and actually a lot more that we're going to be talking about, with over 20 years of experience across a range of different institutions, from Brussels all the way to Washington. So this is going to be very interesting for today's conversation. And she's also the CEO and founder of Forward 1990, a consultancy, and the European AI Hub, as amongst other things. She received the recognition as a young leader by the European Parliament and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, amongst other awards that she's received. So, Sevinç, very, very happy to have you on the show. You're also an EU influencer, so we got to meet in person last year. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you very much for having me. And actually, your award or recognition coming from your institution is one of the most cherished one for me. Thank you.
That's great to hear. And, you know, I think it's very interesting to try to see who are the people who are having an impact on the conversation around key topics, because, you know, I think what we observe is that the online conversation mirrors the conversation behind the scenes. So people who tend to have an impact there are also people who are very knowledgeable and well informed, and they just share that with the rest of the world. So I think it's also a great contribution that you make to the space. And, you know, I think this is 2025, I would say the year of the Trump administration. We've seen the inauguration. We're entering into this new era. And before we go into this topic, and I'd love to hear your views on this, I noticed that you wrote a post 2 years ago about great leaders, because you worked yourself with presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, and executives, and you wrote this about the values that these leaders had, which included openness, high emotional intelligence, certain amount of modesty, versatility, a constructive approach, and even being humble and leading by example. Now, when I was reading that, the first thought that came into my mind was, I look at the United States, I look at the Trump administration, I look at Elon Musk, and I'm thinking, do these leaders have these values? So is it aspirational or is it an observation? And what do you think about the leadership that you see coming out of the United States?
So it's a very interesting angle. First of all, in every edition of your top influencers list, you are bringing together the great influencers, impactful people, and the leaders. They are all of them are leaders in their fields. In this context, you're right to mention this. Of course, there is an aspirational aspect to that. How we would like to see leaders, but at the same time, it's about the definition of leadership. The definition of leadership, in my view, is not about being in a leadership position. You may be in a leadership position, but you may not be a leader. What is defining the leadership, in my view, is if you are taking people, societies, communities further forward. You are taking them through the way they could not go alone. So this is leadership. And Donald Trump's or any other leader's leadership capacity should be defined by that. Otherwise, they will be remembered as the negative leadership example, or as not as leaders, but holding a leadership position in a power authority position. So this is my view. But of course, like everything, we are going through a very interesting time in global history. And in the other episodes in history, we've seen similar examples, similar changes. I believe as leaders, it's our responsibility to try to influence those people in authority positions which could make impact on societies and our future, to be more inspirational and showing true leadership to make our world and our continent a better place. This is all about it.
Now we've had two very significant elections in the US, in Europe, and I think there's a question around the state of democracy, and what I'd like to ask you is whether you feel that social media has played an important role in giving these new leaders or these new political elected official their role. I mean, we've seen in the US that alternative media, podcasts seem to play a much greater role than what's being referred to as legacy media. And do you feel that this has become so important that, like we've seen in Romania, there was a ban on, well, they canceled an election because of the impact of TikTok. So what do you think is the impact of social media on these elections? How important is it? And do you think it's worrying the way it kind of increases polarization and extremes?
We talked about leadership and how now, as a medium, social media is impacting it. I believe we are looking at only today. If we are looking at only today and the outcomes, it could be a little bit narrow-minded approach. We have to see where it started. I believe that it started in Barack Obama's first election, and I was in the United States. I was a student at Harvard University when I was working in the European Parliament. I've been a student during the summer term in 2007 when Obama organized his grassroots work, campaigning through primaries. So this is actually where we first saw this data-driven and social media intense campaigns. Of course, the very early examples of them. And then the second campaign happened in 2012 elections. I happened to be the lucky one who got trained by the top leaders of this campaign, and they shared the top lessons for them, both for the grassroots, data-driven campaigns, and social media, digital campaigns. So then Trump's election happened. I believe sometimes we see this evolution or the process as if it started all with Trump, which is wrong. Trump just used similar methodology, similar campaigning methodology and the system and technology, which was used by Barack Obama too. So more targeting, more personalization, etc. So, but for the wrong reasons. So I believe it's not the technology or the social media platform alone we should look at. Of course, in time, all these social media platforms and the businesses, mega businesses behind these social media platforms, saw this opportunity as well. And algorithms, of course, shaped a lot the public opinion throughout the campaigns, throughout the election periods, not only in US, across Europe, in Turkey, in different countries. And it really impacted the election results. Because why? In my view, the echo chambers, these algorithms created, and sometimes the design of a social media platform is really enabling this. This is actually why TikTok is more popular than Meta these days, because in Meta, by design, it was more prone to be an echo chamber, and the TikTok has a more open space in that sense. So you could learn and listen to different kinds of view of people whom you don't know well or in your real life. So in today's world, it became a little bit toxic environment as well, because the big businesses are dominating major platforms like X, for example, today, which made an important impact, and algorithms wars are happening, and the regulations. So we have to see how we can still keep our values alive and how we can keep the dialogue alive. This is the most important thing, because definition of democracy is around being shaped around dialogue, not a monologue. So that's the problem. We have been creating again and again monologues over monologues within our echo chambers. So as the leaders of communication world, campaigning world, or in political world or public affairs, we have to tackle with this issue rather than prisoning ourselves into platforms or new bubbles, like we are in an EU bubble. We have to outreach to the communities which are not reached before. So this is only the solution to today's toxicity, I believe, in this context.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a big conversation, very intense conversation about banning platforms. We've heard after the we've heard in the Romanian election the interference of TikTok. Now in the European sphere, people are discussing whether X should be banned because it's seen as a political tool. I think this is not a perception. I think Elon Musk has made it very clear that he plans to use this to defend his view and his agenda. And then, of course, there's the TikTok ban in the United States because of the Chinese government behind it. So what do you think about these bans? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a legitimate conversation, or everything should be left to be discussed? And as a result of all this, there's been a migration towards Blue Sky, a new channel in the bubble. And a lot of people are saying they're quitting X. I mean, they've been quitting X for the last year and a half or more. Now, so what do you think about the bans of these platforms, the people abandoning X and then going to Blue Sky? And one of the reasons I'm asking that, and we can come back to that later, is in the next 4 years, when people want to engage with the Trump administration, and a lot of people have to, whether they like it or not, they will probably have to use X because that is the channel to talk to this administration. So what are your thoughts on bans and personal preferences of people leaving platforms?
I'll start with an anecdote. Right before TikTok was banned, I sent a video to an American friend living in Washington, D.C. And then he couldn't open the link because ban was already in place. I said, TikTok is banned in US. So then, okay, you cannot see that video I just shared. My friend is a Democrat, and he responded, anyways, Trump is going to remove it next day. So this is quite interesting because it's clear that people don't like states or other different actors to involve in or block their freedom of choice. I think this is very important. But this decision, this choice must be an informed decision, informed choice. This is also very important. Personally, I'm against banning a social media platform unless it is really necessary, such as hate speech and organized hate speech, etc. So using the platform altogether against democratic values or mobilizing people against democratic structure, etc. But at the same time, I believe there are better options than banning social media platforms, whether it is TikTok, X. X would be a disaster, I believe. What are the better ones is enhancing transparency and accountability in these platforms. EU has lots of tools for this, and the champion of these regulations and implementing those regulations. EU must play its role. And I see state actors are becoming more and more, especially the European ones, becoming more and more eager in this area. And the regulations, but not regulations for the sake of regulations, regulations for the sake of protecting citizens and making those social media platforms less of a toxic places for our societies. And maybe more importantly, media literacy. This is a very important one, because if you would like to have an informed decision as a citizen, for example, as an individual, we have to be first informed about the threats, about the dangers, what kind of fake news, disinformation we could be exposed on these platforms. I believe all of us had been at least once victim of these fake news or disinformation campaigns. So and with the help of AI, artificial intelligence technologies, they are more and more convincing. Even the technology leaders these days, I see they are sharing these fake news, because it's very difficult to distinguish of them from real ones. When it comes to our bubble, it's, the name is the bubble, right? And we have to be careful about this. So our bubbles shouldn't turn into our echo chambers. So because there is a diversity of views in the world and understandings and systems and political leanings, democratic models, which are different than ours. And it's not a solution only to move to another platform. I'm not sure even, if it is realistic. With the Blue Sky, I'm considering to open an account there, but I'm not gonna close down my X account, which I have quite a big following there as well. So I'll keep my X. I'll keep X account. I'll keep also TikTok and other platforms. What's important is just knowing, how to manage your data, having media literacy, social media literacy, and better protecting ourselves, and letting actually the authorities to do their job, if possible, not banning the platform.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on media literacy. I think, that's a very important part of what we need to do to better understand ourselves, how to use the platform, but to educate our children and other people. Now, I think there is a problem, though, with what we're experiencing now with Meta following X's lead, saying we abandon content moderation, because I think what people's concern is that the platforms are basically abdicating responsibility and saying, look, it's not our problem, it's not our job to moderate, which, to be honest, was always, I think, what platforms preferred, because they say, well, if we're not responsible, then we're not liable, and it's cheaper, and it means less legal responsibility, etc. But I think that goes very much against the European idea that there is, in fact, a responsibility to these platforms. Now, I think in a recent conversation, Mark Zuckerberg actually asked Trump to protect the American tech giants against European moves, perhaps to fine them, etc. And what I wonder, I think that the platforms are certainly going to try to push this as far as they can, because they are, they feel that they have a protection from the Trump administration. So I'm just wondering, what do you think is going to happen in this new unmoderated world? Do you think the European Union really has a chance of truly impacting X and Meta, given how powerful these companies are, and the fact that they now have the ear of the European president? And what would the world look like unmoderated in the next couple of years?
To respond to this question, we have to look beyond social media moderation, what happens with tech industry or these tech giants. We have to see how the world is changing, how the new world order is going to look like, and where the competition is, where Europe is standing, or so that without seeing these, we cannot make right judgment in any policy areas. We clearly see that this trend, once upon a time, transatlantic alliance is breaking down. So this is important. And we are moving towards more multipolar world, and the US is taking a different kind of stance in many different policy areas, including energy, defense policy, and all these are big challenges for Europe. And Europe must be ready in all these. Of course, Europe's ethical stance is a strength because there is no other actor. May I call it a global actor? Maybe, championing in this ethical fight and the regulation. But at the same time, Europe must really understand what this new era is going to bring to Europe and what kind of new levels of competition investments are required. Without saying this, Europe is going to lose its competitiveness. But at the same time, in this new world as well, like before, but in a more tense way, we have this interdependability as well. Europe is a huge market and a very competitive market in that sense as well. So with all these companies also to access this market, they have to adapt themselves to the European Union's standards, ethical standards in different sectors, not only tech, in many other sectors as well. Europe must be confident, but not overly confident. It has to be very, very realistic and needs to build capacity. In many areas of policies, that's the problem with Europe. Europe is good at various things, but turning this into a result is a different thing. You need to have institutions for this, agility, and capacity to deliver. This is very important. And not only delivering the results, also communicating what you are delivering. With the European Union, my many years of experience in EU institutions, in EU policy making at the highest level, as I shared with my colleagues, that's the problem. Europe as a project, European project, generated lots of wealth, lots of opportunities for the EU citizens and the periphery of Europe. But how good Europe really communicated this, shared with citizens, and convinced people and mobilized people for the future, for a better future, not for only for Europe, also for a better global order. I don't think Europe did a very good job, promising job in that angle, communication angle. This needs to be done as well. So in the new era, rules are being rewritten. So we have to get ready for this. So with the ethical championing or regulation championing, there's nothing wrong with it, but we have to be careful with over-regulation. And at the same time, we have to create an innovator and entrepreneur-friendly ecosystem here in Europe. Maybe we will discuss further about this, but this is also a major challenge for Europe.
Yeah, I think that, there's a huge competitiveness challenge. You could argue that Europe is already far behind the United States in this space. And in terms of the big tech platforms, AI, which we're going to talk about in a minute, there is a really big gap to overcome. My fear is that we're going to see a big confrontation now between the US and Europe on values. It's actually an extension of the culture war that took place in the United States. And I don't know if the European institutions and leaders are ready to take on this fight and to actually really tell a story with emotion, with passion. Because if you don't do that, I think you just lose the battle. So I think we're at a juncture where it's not business as usual. I think the values that a lot of people share about certain equality, inclusion, all these things are just being massively challenged. And I think that we're going to have this very intense moment. Now,
maybe I can add something. It's not just only between the US and the EU. Within the EU, we have those Trump-like actors as well. And different countries are run by somehow more far-right actors as well. So it's not only about it's a fight between US and the EU. It's also within the US, there are certain forces working for values we share. And also within the EU, there's this division and polarization as well. When we talk about, where we're heading, and if European institutions and of course, member states, not only European institutions, member states are an important part of this picture, how they are going to act. For example, when we look at 2016, this is the year of Trump's election and Brexit. We shouldn't forget this, how we ended up in Brexit. So this is exactly how we ended up. I was a young advisor in the European Parliament. I perfectly remember Nigel Farage was becoming more and more popular because he was communicating Europe in his way, with his messaging on the platforms the mainstream political actors were refraining from. So they were not active there. They were not communicating Europe enough. I remember as a young advisor, I was trying to warn my European politician friends in the mainstream politics about him, what's going on. And I remember all of them was calling, oh, Nigel Farage is a joke. And then this is how we ended up in 2016 in the situation of Brexit, which really harmed European projects. So this is now, it was kind of a lab for today, probably. So today we are again in a similar kind of situation. That's why European leaders, member states, European institutions must be really vigilant about this.
Yeah, I think the key thing you mentioned here is we need to stop underestimating how important these players are. So I think, typically with Nigel Farage and Brexit, people just didn't think it was going to happen, underestimated the impact that both these people had and the way they communicated. And I think this is key. I think what people in the bubble need to understand is they need to change their communication tone and message and channels, and they have to become much more raw and direct and creative if the message is to go through. And I think there's still a lot of work to do before we see this. And my concern is that I don't know if people will take those lessons fast enough as they enter into this, I would say existential crisis that I think we're entering into. Now, in terms of you yourself, you're a user of different social channels. Which channels do you use the most? And how do you manage your content in this moment of constant change, people shifting platforms and being worried that they don't own their content and that their platform of choice might be banned tomorrow? So what's your approach?
Actually, I don't have a favorite platform. All platforms are my favorites as long as they function, they deliver results, they generate results. Because my content on X is quite different than my content on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. So currently, I'm renewing my strategy on TikTok, but it's a very promising platform as well. And it's very agile, and it's much easier to grow there as well. And you can reach the communities and personalities much quicker than traditional platforms. That's what I like with TikTok, for example. So my approach is just personalizing my strategy, my content strategy, my approach based on the platform and the crowd. Because if you are not personalizing or tailoring your approach according to the platform and the crowd, the audience, so you're gonna fail. So I use, for example, WhatsApp as a platform. Not many probably use. Texting is a very powerful tool because nobody anymore reads email, right? Or using emails only for really necessary functions. So email marketing campaigns are not as efficient as before, like Obama's campaign terms, etc. At the time, it was different. X is different for me as a platform. The content I share there. For my company, we share or other platforms I run, or my personal pages. So it's all about, tailoring the approach in those platforms. Other one is podcasting, Spotify or SoundCloud. I try to use all of these. Podcasting is the king of these years. So because we all have and suffer from attention span, and it's not very easy to watch a long video or read a long text anymore. But it is much easier for us in today's world while we are driving or doing something else, listening a podcast. So with the European AI Hub, we have a podcast series focusing on, for example, future of democracy and technology, how AI age is going to impact our democracies. It is linked to Democracy for All platform we have. And also video, we are now aiming to look into, because video, especially on YouTube, it's going to grow a lot as well in the coming years. That's my expectation. And the shorts, YouTube shorts, and repurposing YouTube shorts as TikTok videos. So these are the platforms, I believe, easy to digest, shorter versions, and delivering the message, core message, very quickly and in an engaging way, and using the storytelling methodology, which is lacking very much in European politics, I believe, and the European Union institutions. There is some improvements, but I think they need to work on this a lot.
Yeah, no, I very much like what you're saying. I think this idea of really understanding that each channel serves a different audience for a different purpose. I think for most people, they have to pick one or two. And, maybe as an organization, they can do 3 or 4, but it's really hard to have kind of really proper strategies. I'm spending more time now on Blue Sky, where I can see a growth of conversation and interest, and on LinkedIn, which I feel is kind of the business community. I think for X, it's more observation to see what's happening. And, I think for Instagram, again, it's more of an observation. So I think that's a very good point. Now, I think what's very interesting, and you also said it, is that, I don't think there's any single channel format that's really emerging. We said as communicators, I think we say a lot, short form video is going to dominate because of TikTok, but then you have these 3-hour-long podcasts, which are, so I think people really like different things. And I don't think there's a magical formula. I think some people love to sit and watch or listen to a long podcast. The Substack is getting a lot of traction to read good articles, and I'm reading more and more from there. And newsletters are back in fashion. Podcasts and newsletters are very old technologies coming back and becoming super popular for some reason. At the same time, it's short. So I think that the channel fragmentation is there. Like, you have all these different channels that go to different communities, and then you have format fragmentation, where in addition to having video and text and podcasts and this and that, it's almost impossible to say there's one way of doing it. So I think you just need to try different ones and see the ones that most resonate with you or with your audience. So I think what we're looking at is constant change.
And also combining, right? Different kind of platforms. And for example, in Forward 1919, we're a global strategic advisory firm. What we do for every publication, we have a guideline. It's very easy to read and very concise. For example, we shared it with the European parliamentarians. This is the feedback we received, that we were very happy. It's very easy to read, and you give the core messages very quickly in your publications. But it's not enough, because it is at least a couple of pages. And in today's world, it's really, really difficult to make someone to read a couple of pages. What we do, we turn every publication into a podcast, very engaging podcast. So we give the choice to our audience. If they would like to listen to podcasts, they can listen to podcasts, our publication in the format of a podcast in a very engaging way. Or they can, of course, read our PDF format publications as well. You're right.
Yeah, and what you said is so interesting. Actually, one of my favorite podcast tool now is Notebook LM, the
Yeah,
tool that Google launched and that
sure.
automatically creates a podcast conversation from a couple of documents, which is amazing. I'm still blown away when I hear this conversation because the voices sound so natural and so human. And actually, who knows if humans are still going to be giving podcasts in the next year? Because I mean, this tool is going to keep getting better.
Sure.
But I want to ask you about AI because you are the founder of European AI Hub. So you're obviously looking at those issues very carefully. Maybe tell me a little bit what got you into AI, and how did you approach this? Because in Brussels, people talk a lot about AI regulation. But before we talk about regulation, I want to talk about how you use AI and how important you see it in our business world.
I'm an early adopter of AI in Brussels bubble, I believe. So I first started many years ago by using AI assistants to schedule my appointments by using NLP, natural language processing. One of my interviews with, it was Deutsche Welle, it was arranged by my AI assistant. I asked the interviewer, the journalist friend, I said, how was my assistant? And she said, she was awesome. She was responding my emails, by Sunday nights. How that's possible? She said. And I said, because she's an AI, she's not a human. So I adopted these technologies at a very early, very early on.
When was that?
And I'm sorry?
When did
When
you
was it?
start using it?
That was, I think, 2018 already. Yeah,
Okay,
2018.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And how I ended up in artificial intelligence domain is through democracy, in fact, because I launched Democracy for O as a platform. Then we turned it into a think and do tank. And there we were focusing on technology, transformational technologies, blockchain, big data technologies, artificial intelligence, and many other technologies, how they are going to impact our democracies and what kind of change we need our democracies to make our democracies their 21st century version. Because I personally believe our democracies are stuck in 20th century in terms of structure, in terms of organization, in terms of technological medium, and understanding. So this is how I ended up in AI domain, because I've seen both the opportunities and the risks these technologies may bring, and I started to develop an expertise on it. It's quite fascinating how AI is rapidly developing and will be developed even further. You mentioned, for example, Google's Notebook. There is another podcast platform, Descript. There is another one, ID, for generating avatars and creating short videos. Many others in the communication fields we may give as an example. But at the same time, not only generative AI, in the robotic technologies, AI is being used in healthcare. There's massive opportunity, but at the same time, massive risks. So these areas are developing very rapidly. The problem for Europe, for all of us, we are not the owner of these technologies. So this is what needs to be addressed. Europe needs to be the innovator of these technologies, owner of these technologies, if they would like to be a viable actor in terms of regulator as well, ethical standing as well. So this is where the missing link is. That's why Europe needs to invest much more money, much more funding into R&D, research and development. Currently, the AI scene is dominated by two actors, basically, the US and China. And these two actors are dominating the scene from different angles or different domains. But how Europe really can put herself into this map and really shape how the AI technologies and at the same time the regulations and understandings are being shaped. So Otherwise, Europe is really lagging behind in the AI domain. Just regulations is not enough, although it's an important strength for Europe. But at the same time, we have to be the innovator in this domain.
Yeah, and I was thinking as you're talking that I think there are real opportunities for Europe and to actually improve democracy by using AI tools. And for Europe, especially for translations, you can really start explaining what you're doing. I mean, this is actually a very simple win, which is all the stuff you're trying to communicate. Well, you can now localize it in 27 languages. It's really possible. And the second thing is you can have these chatbots helping people understand what matters to them about Europe, because nobody goes through the website of the Commission unless they work in Brussels. The people in different countries don't have time for this. It's not so. I think that might be a really interesting way, and then maybe starting to really communicate it better. But I think the big criticism that I hear that's leveled at the EU is you're focused on regulation instead of innovation. And so instead of trying to create better players, they just want to create restrictions. And that's what's going to lead to this big confrontation with the US. Now, what do you think about that? And what do you think about people who say, look, Europe is so far behind the US players that it's almost impossible for Europe to catch up now? Do you think it's realistic to think that Europe could come up with players like what Microsoft, Google, Meta, OpenAI are doing today? Or is it really realistically? Because I think that, if you look at the scene, you just don't see any European players really coming up up front.
Or those who are emerging are moving to the US. So they are becoming American. Yeah, of course. They are becoming in Silicon Valley actors. Some are going to Asia. Market is bigger, regulations are loose, and the workforce cost is lower. So for Europe, realistically, it's a big challenge. I don't say it's impossible to catch up with these actors. Also, by the size as well, the size of the market and the power, it's a bit challenging, but it's not impossible. Europe just needs to do what she can do best. Not over-regulating, because over-regulation can really kill innovation and creativity. This is in some domains. This is what we experience in Europe, as well as maybe the work culture. So in other places, these companies are generating better results because costs are lower, work culture is different. In Europe, it's not that easy for a startup, for a new enterprise, an innovator to survive with these high costs innovators are facing with. This is one. Europe needs to address this issue and simplify the regulations, a little bit simplify the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy and red tape is a big issue in many European countries. I always give as a best example, Estonia. I'm also Estonian digital resident, just to support actually their system, because they're very advanced with this. They almost, removed all the red tape. You can do everything digitally. You can communicate with the state, with the Estonian state. For example, I remember a couple of years ago, I had a problem with the intermediary company. I couldn't reach them. And then I was really hopeless. I said, okay, maybe I should write the Estonian government. But of course, my expectation as a many years of Brussels resident, I said, I will send an email, but I don't expect much from it. And then in 30 minutes, Estonian government responded to me with an apology and jumped into the contact between me and this company, and fixed the problem, gave me the feedback. They asked my postal address to send me a gift as an apology. This is unbelievable, isn't it? Wow. So it's not just about...
What was the gift? What was the gift?
Oh, it was a sweatshirt of Estonian e-residency program.
Cool.
It was such a cool and nice gesture, but I was stunned. I've never seen such a government service in my life. Never such digital, such agile, entrepreneurial. So I think this is the solution. Europe really needs to look at Estonia's experience and learn. They can learn a lot from it. We can apply this to European institutions, as you said earlier, very rightly. European Union institutions' website, even as experts, it's very challenging sometimes to find the right piece of information. As experts, of course, we can understand what it says, but for men on the street, it's very difficult, very challenging. That's why they need to deploy these AI tools, what AI is bringing as an opportunity to us to better communicate Europe and Europe's objectives, but simplifying regulation, simplifying procedures or red tape is very important to enhance this entrepreneurship ecosystem here in Europe.
Yeah, and I think you're right. When you point out Estonia, it's a reminder that Europe has these actual entrepreneurs. Spotify, Skype.
Yeah, sure.
We have a lot of, and now we have a lot of AI initiatives.
Sure.
But I think, and so when you look at the whole of Europe, you have different countries. It's like a lot of experiments going on, and in fact, there is a lot of entrepreneurship. But what's missing is that kind of next level and kind of visibility for these entrepreneurs to get a lot of support when they're successful and to enable them to be successful, and for the EU to shift their mindset and to really become more entrepreneurial. And I hope that the crisis that I believe we're going to enter into can serve as a wake-up call to really force things, because you're going to have to change things dramatically. For example, when you say the EU website, the reality is that it's unacceptable to have such a badly designed website, and the answer is always going to be, oh, but it's very complicated. There's also, that's just not true. If you went to a proper company, you could redesign it and you could make it cutting edge as one of the best examples, but instead they're prisoner of their own procedures, and so they don't make the radical change. You just need to kind of put it aside, start fresh, and then recreate the content from an AI perspective. So I think some very, very good points. Now, you must meet a lot of people in your work, as I think we all do, young people, recent graduates, interns. When they ask you, what is your advice to them? I always ask my guests this question: what is your kind of recommendation to them? What are the things they need to do to be successful in the EU, in communication, and perhaps in general?
The EU career, many young people and sometimes group of young people are paying for many years, paying visit to me here. And this is always the question, how I can have a career in EU affairs, public affairs, or an international career. What are my advices in this angle? First of all, yes, we are in the age of AI, but even in the age of AI, storytelling is very, very important. How good communicator you are. And I believe storytelling, being a good storyteller, is an important indicator of being a good communicator. So this is one of the important communication skills they really need to develop throughout their career. Like in the EU, you might be the top expert on something, but if you cannot communicate it, explain it to a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 18-year-old in a much more simpler way, maybe you are not an expert enough in this domain. So this is why for young people, it's very important to focus on and learn about communication, interpersonal skills, and developing their storytelling skills. This is one thing. And also being authentic in their communication is very important. In a world of artificialness, artificial segments everywhere, including artificial intelligence, I believe being human, being authentic, is a very essential and very important value. So if you can use it, young people need to learn how to authentically engage in communication with their seniors or with their peers, and understand the human dimension of things. If you can control the human dimension, not the control, but understand and place yourself in the right position in human dimension, so you can conquer the world, your career. You can be very, very successful. The other one is, I believe, being tech savvy is very important. We mentioned several platforms already. There are many more, but if you are not tech savvy, then your career is at risk, especially in the age of AI, because in the age of AI, job market is changing dramatically. In every domain, we will be impacted by AI developments, AI technologies. So if you are not ready for it, becoming kind of an AI coordinator, using the AI tools in the right time, in the right way, so then you are going to lose your competitive edge in your career. These are the important aspects, and being open-minded is very important. For a young person, being too opinionated, not being open-minded is a big red flag, is a big problem, because if you are open-minded, so then you can see the opportunities. Otherwise, you might be focused on too much the fear, the risks, and this and that. So you may not see the opportunities. These are the advices I would share with a young person.
Excellent. And I was talking to one of our interns, we call them hyperlearners at ZN earlier, and actually saying, I think that the tech savviness you just described is actually a huge opportunity, because with AI, all these tools are coming online so quickly that nobody can keep up. So if you are really trying them out, learning, going to YouTube, learning how to use them, you become immediately an expert when you go into your next job application. And I mean, honestly, for companies to say, okay, this person has spent 6 months just trying all these different AI tools, that's great. So you have this massive competitive advantage of people who just don't have time to do this. So when you have these new technologies, I think that's great. I think the storytelling point is extremely important. We all need to tell our story. When you're applying for a job, when you're selling a story, you need to communicate. If you don't communicate it, then even your expertise is not enough, because you need to tell somebody about what you've discovered or what you want to communicate. And the authenticity, I think, as you said, it's important, but there's a kind of scary idea of you overusing AI to write content. So imagine every LinkedIn post is written by AI, and every comment is written by AI, and nobody's even reading anything because everything is automated. And I think that's where authenticity means, you know what? You have to stop, read the thing, write something that means something to you. And if you don't do that, then all of this, the bots will be reading it, but nobody else will. And this will happen. I think there will be this, this creation of content by AI, which is going to be more and more of this stuff. And I think we can already recognize content that's just too AI written. You can feel that it just doesn't feel natural. And so that's why actually human podcasts like this one is a conversation. We can't yet fake it. So we are real, and we're really having this conversation, which I think people then can say, okay, this is what they feel, they believe based on their experience. And it's not just a notebook LM creating our little conversation. So excellent advice. Now, in terms of your recommendation for our listeners on what to read, what to watch, and what to listen to, what do you suggest?
Okay. As a book, I like to suggest all books of Daron Acemoğlu. He was a Nobel laureate. Daron Acemoğlu's latest book published in 2023 Power and Progress, 100-year struggle over technology and prosperity is quite interesting. And the Narrow Corridor is also interesting. It's a bit earlier, 2019. But Daron Acemoğlu's all books of him are quite interesting, especially the latest one, Power and Progress. I would definitely recommend your listeners. As podcast, there's one podcast, I don't know if in EU bubble many listen to New Books in Public Policy. It's a podcast which is helpful and interesting to discover new books in public policy. I enjoy much. Of course, from the EU bubble, Paul Adamson's podcast is quite interesting. So I always learn new things. He brings leaders from diplomacy world, business world, and EU institutions to his podcasts. And I always learn interesting stories, interesting angles I learned from his podcast. Movies are interesting. I'm a big fan of House of Cards. I'm sure everybody knows about the House of Cards because of Netflix, but I'd like to recommend House of Cards as it is a British original version. It's maybe even more interesting than Hollywood's made production. So there you can see this European angle, European twist in House of Cards. This is very interesting. And Trump's inauguration just happened, and the First Lady's outfit was talked a lot. So V for Vendetta is the theme of this year, seemingly, maybe the coming years. V for Vendetta, definitely.
Okay, interesting. People can reflect on what V for Vendetta might mean in the coming years. But thank you so much for being on the show. Great comments and recommendations. We will be continuing this discussion online on different platforms, of course. And thank you for your insights and for being with us today. So that's all we have time for. Have a fantastic day and see you online. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the ZNL Podcast. Did you like it? If so, thank you so much for watching this episode of the ZNL Podcast. Did you like it? If so, please share it on your social media, subscribe, and give us a comment. We will see you again on the next episode. Until then, remember, stay always one step ahead.